Nyaya literally means rules, method, or judgment. It is also the name of one of the 6 orthodox schools of Hinduism. This school's most significant contributions to Indian philosophy was systematic development of the theory of logic, methodology, and its treatises on epistemology. Nyaya school's epistemology accepts 4 out of 6 pramanas as reliable means of gaining knowledge: pratyaksa, anumana, upamana, and abda. In its metaphysics, Nyaya school is closer to Vaisheshika school of Hinduism than others. It holds that human suffering results from mistakes, defects produced by activity under wrong knowledge. Moksha, it states, is gained through right knowledge. This premise led Nyaya to concern itself with epistemology, that is the reliable means to gain correct knowledge and to remove wrong notions. False knowledge is not merely ignorance to Nyāyikas, it includes delusion. Correct knowledge is discovering and overcoming one's delusions, and understanding true nature of soul, self and reality. Nyāyika scholars approached philosophy as a form of direct realism, stating that anything that really exists is in principle humanly knowable. To them, correct knowledge and understanding is different than simple, reflexive cognition. It requires a ny-āyá. An influential collection of texts on logic and reason is the Nyaya Sutras, written by Aksapada Gautama about 2nd century CE. Nyaya school shares some of its methodology and human suffering foundations with Buddhism. However, a key difference between the two is that Buddhism believes that there is neither a soul nor self. Nyaya school, like other schools of Hinduism, believes that there is a soul and self, with liberation as a state of removal of ignorance, wrong knowledge, the gain of correct knowledge and unimpeded continuation of self. Etymology. Nyaya is a Sanskrit word which means method, rule, specially a collection of general or universal rules. In some contexts, it means model, axiom, plan, legal proceeding, judicial sentence, or judgment. In the theory of logic, and Indian texts discussing it, the term also refers to an argument consisting of an entheme or sometimes for any syllogism. In philosophical context, Nyaya encompasses propriety, logic and method. Nyaya is related to several other concepts and words used in Indian philosophies: Hetu Vidya, Anviksiki, Brahmana Sastra, Tattva Sastra, Tarka Vidya, Vadartha and Fakika Sastra. Some of these subsume or deploy the tools of Nyaya. Overview. Nasadiya Sukta then was not non-existent nor existent. There was no realm of air, no sky beyond it. What covered in, and where, and what gave shelter? Was water there, unfathomed depth of water? Who really knows? Who will here proclaim it? Whence was it produced? Whence is this creation? The gods came after this world's production. Who knows then whence it first came into being? Rigveda. Creation. 10-129-1. 10-129-6. The historical development of Nyaya school is unclear, although Nasadiya hymns of Book 10 chapter 129 of Rigveda recite its spiritual questions in logical propositions. In early centuries BCE, states Clooney, the early Nyaya scholars began compiling the science of rational, coherent inquiry in pursuit of knowledge. By 2nd century CE, Aksapada Gautama had composed Nyaya Sutras, a foundational text for Nyaya school, that primarily discusses logic, methodology and epistemology. The Nyaya scholars that followed refined it, expanded it, and applied it to spiritual questions. While the early Nyaya scholars published little to no analysis on whether supernatural power or God exists, later Nyaya scholars, such as Udayana, examined various arguments on theism and attempted to prove existence of God. Other Nyaya scholars offered arguments to disprove the existence of God. The most important contribution made by the Nyaya school to Hindu thought has been its treatises on epistemology and system of logic that, subsequently, has been adopted by the majority of the other Indian schools. 16 padarthas or categories. The Nyaya metaphysics recognizes 16 padarthas or categories and includes all 6 categories of the Vaisheshika in the second one of them, called Prameya. These 16 categories are Pramana, Prameya, Samsaya, Praroyana, Dristanta, Siddhanta, Avayava, Tarka, Nirnaya, Vada, Yalpa, Vaitanda, Hetvabazar, Chala, Jati and Nigrahasthana. Epistemology. The Nyaya school of Hinduism developed and refined many treatises on epistemology that widely influence other schools of Hinduism. Nyaya treated it as theory of knowledge, and its scholars developed it as pramana sastras. Pramana, a Sanskrit word, literally is means of knowledge. It encompasses one or more reliable and valid means by which human beings gain accurate, true knowledge. The focus of pramana is how correct knowledge can be acquired, how one knows, how one doesn't, and to what extent knowledge pertinent about someone or something can be acquired. The Nyayikas accepted 4 valid means of obtaining valid knowledge: perception, inference, comparison and word testimony of reliable sources. The Nyaya scholars, along with those from other schools of Hinduism, also developed a theory of error, to methodically establish means to identify errors and the process by which errors are made in human pursuit of knowledge. These include samsaya and viparya, which can be corrected or resolved by a systematic process of tarka. Perception pratyeksa occupies the foremost position in the Nyaya epistemology. Perception can be of 2 types, laukika and alaukika. Ordinary perception is defined by Aksapada Gautama in his Nyaya Sutra as of non-erroneous cognition which is produced by the intercourse of sense organs with the objects. Indian texts identify 4 requirements for correct perception. Indriyartha sanakasa with the object, whatever is being studied, avyapadasya, avyabhakara and vyavasayatmaka. Ordinary perception to Nyaya scholars was based on direct experience of reality by eyes, ears, nose, touch and taste. Extraordinary perception included yokadar or prativar, samanyalaksana pratyeksa, and jainanalaksana pratyeksa. Determinate and indeterminate perception. The Nyayika maintains 2 modes or stages in perception. The first is called nirvikalpa, when one just perceives an object without being able to know its features, and the second savikalpa, when one is able to clearly know an object. All laukika and alaukika pratyekshasa savikalpa, but it is necessarily preceded by an earlier stage when it is indeterminate. Vatsyayana says that if an object is perceived with its name we have determinate perception, but if it is perceived without a name, we have indeterminate perception. Jayantabhata says that indeterminate perception apprehends substance, qualities and actions and universals as separate and indistinct something, and also it does not have any association with name, while determinate perception apprehends all these together with a name. There is yet another stage called pratyabhijna, when one is able to re-recognize something on the basis of memory. Inference in new manner is one of the most important contributions of the Nyaya. It can be of 2 types: inference for oneself, and inference for others. Inference can also be classified into 3 types: Purvavat, Sheshavat and Samanyatadrishta. A detailed analysis of error is also given, explaining when a new manner could be false. Theory of inference. The methodology of inference involves a combination of induction and deduction by moving from particular to particular via generality. It has 5 steps, as in the example shown. There is fire on the hill, because there is smoke there. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire, e.g., in a kitchen. The hill has smoke that is pervaded by fire, therefore there is fire on the hill. In Nyaya terminology for this example, the hill would be called as paksha, the fire is called as sadhya, the smoke is called as hetu, and the relationship between the smoke and the fire is called as vyakta. Hetu further has 5 characteristics. It must be present in the paksha, it must be present in all positive instances, it must be absent in all negative instances, It must not incompatible with the minor term or paksha, and all other contradictions by other means of knowledge should be absent. The fallacies in a new manner may occur due to the following. Asada. It is the unproved hetu that results in this fallacy. Paksadamata, Ashroyasada. If paksha, minor term, itself is unreal, then there cannot be locus of the hetu. E.g., the sky lotus is fragrant, because it is a lotus like any other lotus. Sverapasada. Hetu cannot exist in paksa at all. E.g., sound is a quality, because it is visible. Vyapayavajada. Conditional hetu. Wherever there is fire, there is smoke. The presence of smoke is due to wet fuel. Savyabhichara. This is the fallacy of irregular hetu. Sadrana. The hetu is too wide. It is present in both sapaksa and vipaksa. The hill has fire because it is knowable. Asadarana. The hetu is too narrow. It is only present in the paksha. It is not present in the sapaksa and in the vipaksha. Sound is eternal because it is audible. Anupasamhari. Here the hetu is non-exclusive. The hetu is all-inclusive and leaves nothing by way of sapaksha or vipaksha. E.g., all things are non-ternal, because they are knowable. Satpratipaksa. Here the hetu is contradicted by another hetu. If both have equal force, then nothing follows. Sound is eternal, because it is audible, and sound is non-eternal, because it is produced. Here, audible is counterbalanced by produced, and both are of equal force. Badita. When another proof definitely contradicts and disproves the middle term. Fire is cold because it is a substance. Viryada. Instead of proving something, it is proving the opposite. Sound is eternal because it is produced. Comparison. Analogy. Upamana means comparison in analogy. Upamana, states Lochtefeld, may be explained with the example of a traveler who has never visited lands or islands with endemic population of wildlife. He or she is told, by someone who has been there, that in those lands you see an animal that sort of looks like a cow, grazes like cow but is different from a cow in such and such way. Such use of analogy and comparison is, state the Indian epistemologists, a valid means of conditional knowledge, as it helps the traveler identify the new animal later. The subject of comparison is formally called upamayam, the object of comparison is called upamanam, while the attribute are identified as samanya. Thus, explains Menir Williams, if a boy says, her face is like the moon in charmingness, her face is upamayam, the moon is upamanam, and charmingness is samanya. The 7th century text Bhattikavya in verses 10.28 through 10.63 discusses many types of comparisons and analogies, identifying when this epistemic method is more useful and reliable, and when it is not. In various ancient and medieval texts of Hinduism, 32 types of upanama and the value in epistemology are debated. Word testimony. Abda means relying on word testimony of past or present reliable experts. Hirayana explains sabda pramana as a concept which means testimony of a reliable and trustworthy person. The schools of Hinduism which consider it epistemically valid suggest that a human being needs to know numerous facts, and with the limited time and energy available, he can learn only a fraction of those facts and truths directly. He must rely on others, his parent, family, friends, teachers, ancestors and kindred members of society to rapidly acquire and share knowledge and thereby enrich each other's lives. This means of gaining proper knowledge is either spoken or written, but through sabda. The reliability of the source is important, and legitimate knowledge can only come from the sabda of reliable sources. The disagreement between the schools of Hinduism has been on how to establish reliability. Some schools, such as Karvakar, state that this is never possible, and therefore sabda is not a proper pramana. Other schools debate means to establish reliability. Testimony can be of two types, Vaidika, which are the words of the four sacred Vedas, and Laukika, or words and writings of trustworthy human beings. Vaidika testimony is preferred over Laukika testimony. Laukika-sourced knowledge must be questioned and revised as more trustworthy knowledge becomes available. Comparison with other schools of Hinduism. Each school of Hinduism has its own treatises on epistemology, with different number of pramanas. For example, compared to Nyaya school's 4 pramanas, Karvaka school has just 1, while Advaita Vedanta school recognizes 6 means to reliable knowledge. The Nyaya theory of causation. Metaphysics. Nyaya Vaisheshika offers one of the most vigorous efforts at the construction of a substantialist, realist ontology that the world has ever seen. It provides an extended critique of event ontologies and idealist metaphysics. This ontology is Platonistic, realistic, but neither exclusively physicalistic nor phenomenalistic. Karl Popper. The Encyclopedia of Indian Philosophies. A cause is defined as an unconditional and invariable antecedent of an effect, and an effect as an unconditional and invariable consequent of a cause. The same cause produces the same effect, and the same effect is produced by the same cause. The cause is not present in any hidden form whatsoever in its effect. The following conditions should be met. The cause must be antecedent, pervavati, invariability, niyata pervavati, unconditionality, ananyādhasiddha. Nyaya recognizes 5 kinds of accidental antecedents, any-āyá, mere accidental antecedent, e.g., the color of the potter's cloth. Remote cause is not a cause because it is not unconditional, e.g., the father of the potter. The co-effects of a cause are not causally related. Eternal substances, or eternal conditions, are not unconditional antecedents, e.g., space. Unnecessary things, e.g., the donkey of the potter. Nyaya recognizes 3 kinds of cause. Samavāyi, material cause, e.g., thread of a cloth. Asamavāyi, color of the thread which gives the color of the cloth. Nimitta, efficient cause, e.g., the weaver of the cloth. Any other Kyatavada of Nyaya. The Nyaya theory of error is similar to that of Kumarila's Viparitaka. The Nyāyikas also believed, like Kumarila, that error is due to a wrong synthesis of the presented and the represented objects. The represented object is confused with the presented one. The word any other means elsewise and elsewhere, and both these meanings are brought out in error. The presented object is perceived elsewise and the represented object exists elsewhere. They further maintain that knowledge is not intrinsically valid but becomes so on account of extraneous conditions.